substance abuse and things like that, that is just, and even being compulsive or whatever, the compulsivity, impulsivity, that is all. I'm triggered to use recovery words. We're being triggered, but what's pulling the trigger? Yeah, you have a trigger, but what is pulling that? It's generally an imagination of something, fear. Like I said last week, is this recording? All right, picking up. Volume's good. Tracy's gonna call you and tell you.
I just checked it. It's good.
Huh?
We're safe.
Okay. And is it zoomed in? Huh? Zoom it in. We don't want chair. We want all. Don't show my belly. So the question was, I mean, all of us have uh, sin in our life. We all have things that are obvious weaknesses that we have to overcome. For many folks, that can be, manifest in addiction or things like that. But again, most I'll say substance abuse. Most substance abuse is trying to cover up it's a coping mechanism for something negative that happened, or usually a trauma that creates a impression that leaves, I'll say, makes or leaves an impression so deep into us. And or it could just be also something that happens so repeatedly, that, it doesn't necessarily at first, just like if you have these sidewalks, right? That go, if you walk the sidewalk to the corner store, it can be a long way around, but then there's always this path that's just beat down, right? Now, you don't make a beat down path like that, you know, with just the first walkthrough. But if you repeatedly walk on that path, or you repeatedly in your brain have that message being sent to you, it wears down and it leaves an indelible mark. It's forever. It's forever there. Even after someone stops using that path, I can tell you what, you could probably go there 3 years later and still see that ground is hard packed underneath there. The grass doesn't quite grow the same as the grass on the side still after 3 years. You know, someone would be able to tell that, there used to be a path here. It's not being used anymore, but there's remnants of it. It's still detectable. So the point is that a lot of times substance abuse is coping mechanisms for something that has left an indelible mark. Now, it could be one thing that happened that was so traumatic, and most everything happens when we're a child, so we don't even have any way to regulate the impact. When you're a child, everything can be impactful. For one thing, you don't have a grid, or you don't have a compartment to put any of the crazy. Like, how do I, you're innocent. You as a being, you're innocent. And innocence knows, even if it doesn't know what's going on or where to put what happened, like, right? It's like, innocence still knows that it's wrong. What happened was wrong. Then, if it continues to happen, innocence eventually goes, well, maybe I'm what's wrong. And what's wrong is now me living in me or whatever, or happy. We try to find a reason when there is no reason, right? And all of the big people around us, they're not going to say, I'm the reason because I'm a bad person and I shouldn't be doing this to you. I shouldn't be traumatizing you this way, or I shouldn't be neglecting you this way, or I shouldn't be creating an unstable environment. They're not going to take ownership. Truth is, most of them do not know that they are in a dysfunction. That's their normal. Their dysfunction is their normal, and now they're passing it off to a child. So what we do is we start to be able to predict. Everybody is prejudiced. Everybody. Now, prejudice is not racist. Prejudice just means to prejudge. Okay? The subconscious mind is wired to be prejudiced. Means it prejudges everything. If I get close to you and I raise my hand suddenly up by your eyes, your prejudice brain, your eyes will close, they will blink. You'll probably flinch, your skin, your body, and it's all prejudged based on your brain is doing these reactions without thinking, without a conscious thought. You're not going, well, let me see, he's a pastor, he's a pretty nice guy, he's probably not gonna. No, you're already hardwired to just assume and to prejudge. I pull away when I sense danger, right? Makes sense. God made us that way so we don't get run over by cars. But when you're little, you start creating your prejudices, all your prejudgment. All your prejudgment is made right down to if a baby is left in a crib, or if a baby does not have a deep male voice in his life when he's an infant, like you can tell. Baby gets picked up, and if it's always just female voice, high pitched, high tone, oh, you're so cute, you're precious, versus, oh, come here, and babies can feel the difference of everything. They're picking up everything, even as an infant. So year after year after year, at 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, you've picked up on all of this stimulus. Whether, when a man's presence enters the room at 2 years of age, you already know, should I be afraid of this presence? Or should I embrace this presence? Or is this just a strange presence? Is this not part of my normal? Not even here, you know what I'm saying? As a baby at 1 year old, 2 years old, you have a routine. You poop the same time, you eat the same time, you cry for this at the same time, and you get picked up. Whether or not you get picked up when you cry, you're already putting that into your neuro pathways. Like, is there a person there to respond when I cry? Who is that person? Does that person have a high voice or a deep voice? Does that person have, long hair? Do I feel hair brushing in? Do I ever get picked up and feel whiskers to my face? Like they're picking it all up. Is it ever hey, baby, that deeper voice, or is it just always this high voice, right? Hey, by 1.5, 1 year old, children are already sense a difference, right? Because it's like, have you ever picked up a baby and it's like, oh, he doesn't like men or she doesn't like women, or like, where does that come from? Like, right? Every time a man picks it up, he cries or whatever, right? Where does that come from? At that age, you're already creating all of these prejudices based on, and again, it's the subconscious. Your subconscious brain is being developed, which will later become your basis on how you make decisions in the future, right? Like whether or not for men, this is a tough one. Whether, because most men aren't nurturers, women are the nurturers in the family, but in this day and age where a lot of men are absent from the home and children are being raised by single moms, it's even worse in the sense of, do I can't do would I ever speak to a man for when I'm in a crisis or a situation? You've already going to determine that before you're 5 years old. Based upon, was there ever a man in your life to help you with when you're, learning how to ride a bike or doing something? Was the man's voice in your life always scolding, always harsh, always overbearing, never, never comforting, never picked you up, never played with you, never, right? Do you have any memories of having good times with a male figure, in your life? Now, when they're 30 years old and they're here at Regenesis, guess what? They have a hard time confiding or receiving from a man. It's easy to talk to mom. It's easy to talk to women. We get all of our needs met by a woman. Why? Because our brains are not hardwired to receive anything good from a man. In fact, we've always just been tense. We've always had to be afraid we were going to get backhanded or yelled at, or right? And so, little boys grow up learning from females, getting all their needs met, and when they have a need. So we see that all the time. Having it be hard to talk to a man about life issues, because mother always did it. Mother was always the one that I could talk to, confide in, or whatever. So, I mean, it's a real crisis, in masculinity, because the fathers or the male role models, the fathers give identity. You can write this down. Fathers give, I use the P's. They provide, they protect, they give personage, which is identity. But if you want to stick with P's, personage. I don't even know if that's a word. Personage. They give you your identity of what kind of person you should be, right? So provision, protection, personage, and procreation. Procreate. They're the seed, but it also speaks to what you will be. Next generation. Why? Procreate. One of the number one things is the personage. You get that from your father. You take on the father's name because the father has been for thousands of years. Okay, it's changed up here in modernism, but if you think that the father if the father is doing his job, he's protecting and he's providing. Let's just take those, protection and provision, and go back all the way back to caveman days, right? It's like, right, build the fire, chop down the tree, gather the wood, keep the bears away, kill the bear, eat the bear, bring it in, right, to the cave, right? Mother, prepares the meal, gives birth to the babies, cuddles the babies, keeps the babies warm, right? Binds up the babies, when he's hurt. But here's the deal. The number one thing that allows you to thrive, okay, growth and thriving requires provision and protection. We could say security, okay? Security. If there's not security, what security does, it gives you peace of mind and peace for the future. The opposite of security is insecurity. Okay? I would venture to say almost all of us in this room grew up with insecurity. With insecurity. And it had everything to do with our father. Everything to do with our father. Now again, our father can be present, but if our father, my father, he created we had a good home. So I can't say that but where my insecurity came from is that I wasn't free to dream. Like, because finances, I'll say, because of provision, seemed to be a lack of provision in our home. There was always stress, right? So now there's stress because of the provision, right? Now, if the father could have brought in more provision, there wouldn't have been that stress. Now we would be more free to do whatever. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's necessarily, I'm not boo-hooing over here, but I'm just talking to you about, and my life wasn't that bad. I had 2-parent home. My father was a hard worker, but, my mother didn't work. And so there was just always stress. When's the car's going to break down? The car's broke down. We don't have enough money to get for gas to even go to church. And children, you need to pray. It's the last 4 days before we get paid. Again, get paid every 2 weeks, but 4 days before payday, there's no meat in the house, right? Then my mother, I could always tell it was macaroni, cheese and stewed tomatoes. Gary, go down and get some, go down into the cellar, right? And we had to have a garden, so we had to, kids, we had to work hard and do the gardening and had to can and had to do all those things for provision, right? So there's like all this stress around provision, which then made my father kind of an angry guy, right? Because he's stressed. He's stressed, all the time, trying to provide. And so that stress goes into the wife. It goes into the children for the provision to provide. Now, he did. I became tough, learned a lot of things, became right, because of some of those stresses can make you actually strong, right? In certain ways, but it can also squash you too. It can squash the peace to dream. Well, you can't dream. You need to go chunk rocks out of the garden. I couldn't be a daydreamer, I couldn't talk about, I'm going to be a businessman. One day I'm going to grow up and have $1 million. Get to work. You're not going to do that. You need to learn how to, work in a factory and do all that. It was a stress over provision, okay, which a father does. So without adequate provision, then that can change the dynamic of the home. And now your personage gets touched by that because now you feel insecure, right? So now your father is not saying, hey man, you can do anything, you can be anybody you want to be. No, you're being groomed to be a blue collar factory worker. You're not being groomed to be anything that you want to be. He wants me to have a better life and maybe wants me to not have the stress of finances and everything like that. But at the same time, the whole structure and the stress of the house and the insecurities is telling me something different. Telling me to be afraid of provision. Even though when we would sit down, we would read the Bible, I can read the scripture that says, I have a plan for you, plans to prosper you, plans, great plans to bring you to an expected end. And I'll rebuke the devourer, and they paid their tithes, and everything like that. But they were not tapped into the provision of the Father, the cattle on 1,000 hills. They didn't understand investing. They didn't understand. It was all fear and works and stress, and right. So then that gets into a kid, right? So the father sets that tone, and if the father's not there or whatever, or not able, right? So you got to have security to grow up, have freedom and creativity of thought, of being peace. So am I right? Come on. Did most everybody in this room grew up in a stressed house, in a stressed home, with probably levels of dysfunction in it that was normal, right? And then if you add, oh, my father was there for the first, 5 years, or there was a man there, but then there was a divorce, there was a death, or there was something, and it's like, now on top of that, Now, even if, listen, even if my world was insecure or stressed, or the man that was coming in was abusive or harsh or whatever, right? The father that was in my life, but still it was a tone. There was a normalcy that was set. Now, you're 5 years old, you're 8 years old, you're 12 years old, whenever the divorce happens or the father leaves, now there's a rip in that. Even though that might not have been good, that was still the basis of my perception. And I had built all my paths, my bridges, my neurons, the pathways from the frontal lobe to the back, from creativity to right brain, left brain. There has to be bridges, pathways that are made. Those pathways are all created and all fixed. They're fixed into place by the time you're 8 years old. Almost every pathway in your brain that you're going to operate on for the rest of your life, that cross over between right brain, left brain, they're all wired in and fixed by the time you're 8. So now something happens at 10, 11, 12, right? Now you're like, even if some of those pathways weren't good, it was leading to fear, and it still doesn't matter. Now you've got a shock, something different that's introduced into your subconscious. There's a break, almost like in the subconscious, not just in the conscious. In the conscious, we rationalize and everything like that, but some of those things like security, identity, all of that stuff, now that comes into question. Wait a second, right? I mean, if you've been functioning a certain way for 8 years, 8 years, this has been what's been predictable. And now something changes at 10, at 12, at 16, which is now you start to go out into the world. You're now, once you're 10 years old and a little bit older, you start to get exposed to more of the world, right? And you're like, hold on, because the early age, you're in elementary school. You're going to school with all the neighborhood kids, right? And guess what? Every kid in your neighborhood and your cousins and they all live like you do. They all live like you. It's social, economic, the stresses, the parenting, it ain't like, it's not like you're being, in elementary schools or smaller schools, then you go to junior high and it's like 3. Oh, now we got kids from different races, the half of these kids live in big houses. They got 2-parent families. I hear stories about them. They're going out to Applebee's. I've never been to an Applebee's. They're going down. We have kids here in Petersburg that have never been. They don't go downtown here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They don't go downtown. They don't go into any of these restaurants down here. They don't. They've never been in them. At 13, 14 years of age, they've never been to 3/4 of those restaurants downtown. I had the football team in here, and they walked into the coffee shop, and they're like, whoa. And they said, we been into a place like this. Yeah. They've been into the McDonald's. They've been down to the corner store. They've been at the gas station deli, wherever EBT is accepted, right? Where it's like, whoa, someone that's 20 years of age, have you ever had a latte? No, I've never had a latte. Uh, but you start getting introduced to that, and then you go, wait a second. Mama never taught me that. I never, what? You start seeing different things, learning different things, and it's like, wait a second, was I lied to for the first 12 years of my life? Right? Some of us, we don't learn this stuff until we're 30. Seriously. Like we get on a track, then we go, we get in trouble, we start smoking reefer and drinking and smoking cigarettes and messing with boys and girls, the same, and then life just gets you just get set in on that track that you were raised on. And it's like, you understand? You can either be exposed to something greater or different, or you can get so locked in to now my security. So listen, so now your security is because of your prejudices, right? You're looking for what is normal to you. Scary. So now all your friends have the same dysfunctions. Why? Because everybody wants, your brain is hardwired to want predictability. Write this down. Your brain, my brain, you can write it this way, my brain values predictability over success. My brain wants predictability over success. If you're given an option of predictability or success, you'll choose predictability every time. Why? You associate predictability with security. I'm familiar with that. I know how that works, so I choose that. Even though it might take me to destruction or whatever, I'm just saying the brain does not want to work. It is hardwired already for this. And when it sees something different, it goes, oh, we would have to change all the wire. You'd have to pull all the wiring out and completely redo it if you wanted to achieve that. Who wants to do all that? Not me. Let's just stick with what we know. Agreed? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Is that why we get stuck in like bad relationships?
Oh, absolutely. Your picker's broke. They have pills for that now.
I don't know if our picker is broke or it's just hardwired in that direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Get my meaning. It is. And again, it is so normal. But going back to the Father sets that. for tens of thousands of years, the mother's role is she works with what she's given. She's given this cave, she makes the best of that cave. She's given this deer, she makes the best of the deer that she's given, right? But it's the father who's supposed to create, bring, and give the female something to work with. If the man's not there to give the female something to work with, she's got a very, very hard job. And she wasn't created to go out and build the cave, dig the cave out, keep the bears away, and cook a great meal. And nurture. She's going to be too stressed out. She's going to be too stressed out. Listen, and this is why men are harder. This is why men's attitudes and personalities, are tougher. Because their job is to create something or get something from nothing, from the ground. Okay? A woman's job is to create something better and beautify something that she's been given by the man. Her job is to soften it up, pretty it up, make it smell better, taste better, right? Be better, right? But if she's not given that, and now she has to be the hunter-gatherer, protector, all this and that. Now she's fried. Now she's just like chicken nuggets again. Here you go. Yeah. Huh?
What if there's no woman? I didn't grow. My mom wasn't present.
Right.
My late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So they what?
I was gonna ask, because that blends into what you're saying, because you said the women, but at the same time, Pastor, and she got a point too. Can it be the other way around? Because let's tell the truth. You got single fathers, and next to that, let's leave out the grandparents.
But the point is not the point is not the whether it's father, mother, or whatever. It's where are you getting that? Because the need and the function still has to go on, and it will go on. The need will be met. Whether it's met in a dysfunctional way, whether it's met by somebody else who's unequipped, or whether it's even met by yourself prematurely, like a child who's required to figure out, where am I going to get my next meal? Like he shouldn't be doing that. But there's a lot of children that have to figure out what they're going to eat for supper, right? So they're meeting the need, which becomes a dysfunction. Because a child should be able to grow in peace. Those things should be taken care of him, and he should be able to dream. He shouldn't have to have the stress, right? There shouldn't be fights over food in the home. And again, I'll say this, it doesn't have to, because when you're a child, you don't know. Like, you don't know what's on the other side of the world, or literally even what's on the other side of the neighborhood. Like, you don't know. So what is in front of you you think that that's your whole grid, right? You don't know that there's other people living, because usually if you get visitors that pop into your world, it's going to be a cousin. It's going to be, again, somebody from the neighborhood who's probably dealing with the same stress as you are. A cousin who's being raised the same way you are, with a lot of the same dysfunctions, right? If you ever had a cousin that was like, you would know it, like, oh, that's the rich cousins. They have, whatever, right? And when we go over to their house, it seems like there's always food there, and there's always fun, or they have the pool, or they have, right? And so, you make all of these associations. And then if your world starts to be a little bit bigger, and you get teased because you don't have provision, or you don't have this or that, then guess what? So also write this down. So your first experience is indelible. Your first experience is like a brand. It leaves a mark. It creates kind of a forever memory. Okay? Because that's the first time. I can tell you, you don't know a year ago on March 15th, if you're a smoker, most of y'all in this room are smoked, on March 19th, 5 years ago, you cannot tell me where you smoked your cigarette. But you can tell me where you were when you picked up your first cigarette and smoked it. But after the 2000th cigarette, you don't know where you were, what you were doing, or who you were with. But the first time. The first time you went to a kind of a fancy restaurant, or the first time you kissed a girl, or the first time you kissed a boy, or whatever. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that you forgot way after that. So the first time, and this is also why God created us, and the Bible warns you about even being in relationships, marry the wife of your youth, and all this and that. Because firsts are very, very impactful. How you experience something first is then how you're going to gauge every other similar experience. Okay? It becomes a almost like the fulcrum that sets your scales, right? Good, bad. It's that point in the middle that now everything gets judged based off of that. That's heavy right there. Because to be honest with you, most of our understanding of money, our first encounters with money and experience, or the first time we had $5 or $10, the first time, right, we were in a group, maybe the first time we slept over with friends instead of being in our home, in our bed, whatever, and who were those friends and what happened, that like all of that stuff. The first time we were called on to answer a question in the classroom, guess what? If we didn't know the answer and we got teased for, she doesn't know, or that was stupid. What are you going to do the second time? I'm not asking questions. I'm not giving answers. Why? First time I did it, boom, I got teased. I got ridiculed. I got picked on. Right? So we're going back even to then even slight things that happen. Maybe it wasn't horrific, but then the second time something happened, it was also kind of negative. Again, not big, but it wasn't fun. Wasn't enjoyable, right? Well, okay, I'll give it a third shot or a fourth shot or a fifth shot, a sixth shot, right? And it's like, and every time it's not like I'm celebrated. It's not great. It's not wonderful. So I guess this is just how it is. So then you start steering away from things. You start moving away from things before you're ever asked, before you try, before you whatever. You just move to the predictable. You create your response based on these experiences. Wow. Right? For a lot of you, you didn't go to church. You didn't have a good church life. You think about some of the children you see around here now, like Michael and Ransom and Asher and everything in there, and even little Carmen's little boy and stuff, where they're running around the church and they're just, going in between the legs of people. They're getting on the microphone. They're, praising the Lord over in the corner and everything like that, right? Like, what if that could have been your life for 7 years of your life? Huh? Do you think you would then be attracted towards the things of the Lord? Do you think right? What if that was just your experience, your encounter? You'd be like, I have the best memories of being at church. I have the best memories of the men in the church, picking me up and throwing me in the air and taking me here or taking me there with the youth group, or playing ball with me, or being in the even in the nursery coloring with me or whatever, or little Mason, giving me a high five and, hey, Mason, hey, Michael, how are you guys doing? Tussling my hair and everything like that. It's like, set you up for a whole different, now that's your first time, that's your experience, that's when you're tender, that's when you're pliable, that's when you're learning things, versus, you wake up, mom and dad or mom or whoever has a hangover from Saturday night. They're not really rolling out of bed till noon. You're spilling the milk and getting your own, yogurt push-up or a bowl of cereal, or maybe there's not even that, and you're popping yourself down watching, Adult Swim or friggin' whatever you want to watch. Like, at 5 years old, 6 years old.
So, Pastor, just curious, because it blends into what you're saying. What's the so 50 Cent, what he said was true from his movie, but he says that parents think children don't see everything they see, but children see everything. But this one I want to know, what's the difference between premature versus growing up fast when it comes to a child jumping out the porch? Like, what's the difference between a child, like what you were saying about food? What's the difference between the 6-year-old who chooses to go to the candy store and takes candy or whatever food item versus the 8 or 9-year-old that will cut grass?
It's being taught. So it's having someone in the home who's guiding you. So you're having that protection. So you might have a lot of the same experiences, but are you receiving input and guidance? You know what I'm saying? You could be pushed as a child to do scary things or even have bad things happen. I'm not saying, oh, you have a 2-parent home and everything like that, and your childhood is going to be a cakewalk. No, you're still going to get punched in the face. You know what I'm saying? But when you come home after being punched in the face or being bullied, is there somebody there to help you put it in the right compartment? Tell you, well, that's not who you are. Maybe you should pray for them. Maybe you should, or whatever. Or if this happens again, I'm going to take you and we're going to teach you, we're going to get you enrolled in self-defense courses or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You have someone there to channel the child's frustrations, to channel all the child's energy. You have someone there, right? To give security, someone to nurture, someone to identity, right? We go back to the father gives identity. How does he give identity? By saying, listen, you're not this. Perfect example, right? Like, you're my son, you're my child, or we don't do that in this family. Who the father puts you around. I mean, most of my cousins and everything, again, we'll go back to that. Most of my aunts and uncles and everything like that, they were also blue collar workers, factory workers, right? And one of their greatest things, we didn't necessarily live in the we had modest homes, but it was like all the men around there, they like cars. It was like you drive to your cousin's, it's an hour away, and it's like, how long did it take you to get here? Oh, I did it in 47 minutes. Yeah, there were no cops on this road, and I put it down, and and you've got and on Saturdays you're washing the cars up, and you're talking about I got dual exhaust put on my old, it was a big land yacht, but we put duals on it, just so it still sounded like a, and just you had all of that input, right? You're receiving all this input. You're receiving all this guidance. The men in the family were deacons in the church. They were the worship leaders, and my uncle played guitar and led worship in a church that had 20 people. All the women wore buns and long hair and buns and dresses and everything. And third stanza now, I'll fly away, on the third verse. And everybody sang at the top of their lungs. This is where I get it. I don't understand people who don't that's even something. So for me, like when I worship, because that was my normal, I went to these small little churches, right? Like, the wooden pews and 30 people in there. And you sang like there wasn't a band, and there wasn't microphones, and there wasn't any of that stuff. There was maybe, if you were lucky, you had one old lady on a piano, over in the corner, or in my case, my uncle played a guitar, and they didn't have a pianist, and there was 30 people in the church, and you sang, you know, you sang uh, um, loud. Because there wasn't no one else, and there is no carpet. There's no so like all the walls are hard. The floor is hard. The pews are hard. Everything. It just echoes and vibrates in there, and you know. Uh, so yeah, I mean that sets me up for how I just I can't understand. I can sing. I can sing loud. I can out sing. You know most all people, just because again if something got into me at little, this is how you do it. you know you go to church and you're heard, and you harmonize too. Learn how to harmonize. It was like all this all so we grow up, and I'll say it like this: we grow up with all these unwritten rules, right, in our home. Like, you don't do that, you don't cry, you don't you some unwritten rules. We had a girl who got bullied. She was burnt in when she was little, and she had burns. She was Puerto Rican, she was small, and she was burnt when she was little, and she grew up in the streets. Okay. um, Father, I don't really think she had a father so much. I think she had an uncle. But that Puerto Rican culture is just like, I mean, seriously, like, I will cut you. Like, give a kid a knife at 5 years of age. There, go cut somebody. But she remembers getting beat and getting picked on very bad, and she came to this was after she got off the bus, and the bus drops them off close to the door, whatever, but then kids started fighting, and she got into a fight and got beat up, right, just right. So if you could imagine, the bus pulls up here. As soon as you get off, kids get into a fight. She gets all beat up and teased and everything like that. And she's smaller than everybody else, got these, scars from being burnt and stuff. And and she comes to the house for safety and security, for comfort and nurture. And her uncle or whoever was there watched it all, shut the door in her face. I was like, get back, you go out there and you beat them up. No comfort, no whatever. You think that when she's 13, now she's drug dealer, she will cut you, she will curse you, she will beat you. She will creep up on you in the night, get even with you, whatever she has to do. All happened. That was her normal. Because that's what she was being taught. That's how she was being raised. There was nobody there to regulate it and say, those people are bad, those children are bad, come here, and talk her through the trauma, or talk her through the experience, Um, so like I said, and then your brain is not wired for success. It's wired for predictability. So now you wonder, why can't I be a success? Because success is abnormal. Success is something completely different than what you've experienced, what's predictable. In fact, success is unpredictable. The only way you can achieve success is to go against, you hear what I'm saying? Go against everything that's predictable. That's what change is. Change is going against everything that you've ever known. Because everything that you've known is in your past. Everything that you've experienced is what's been predictable. Everything, almost everything in our life is just a repeat of what has been. That's what predictability does. It completes the cycle. It keeps the loop going. So you have to break it, get out of that cycle, create a whole new cycle. With what? I don't know how. I don't have financial literacy. I don't have tenderness. All I have is toughness. All I have is defense. I don't have, be calm. All I have is quick responses. I'm hardwired to defend myself against anything that is unfamiliar to me. Right? And what is all of that? It's going back to the question. Fear. Fear of the unknown. Because what you're about to step into is not predictable. Right? You haven't had a man, for many women, they haven't had a man in their life that showed them value, showed them worth, that wasn't connected to sex. So now your brain is like value for sex, value for my feminine companionship, not just value for me, not I'm someone to be protected, nurtured, and all of this and that, which a father should do, right? Give identity, give me his name, right? Don't we all take on the man's name? As a wife, you take on the man's name. As a child, you take on your father's name. What is that? Identity. But you haven't had a man give you identity. And so you still want it, but they're not looking to give you identity. That's not on their brain. Let me share and give this individual identity. And this identity is an identity that she can be proud of. If she takes on my identity, I will give her an identity that she can be proud of. Huh? No. Men aren't thinking that way. I'll give her a home and provision that she can be proud of. I'll give her some stuff to work with. No, we'll let the government do that. Does she get EBT? Well, good. Good. Her and her kids get EBT. That's great. One less thing I have to worry about. Right? Let the government give them provision. Let baby daddy give them the provision. Right? Let TANF give them the provision. Nuh-uh. You want a man that will give you an identity that you and him can be proud of, provision that you can be proud of, all of that stuff. Why? But I'm just saying, as men, we're not even raised and trained to think that way. Because it wasn't done for us often time. You know. And I'll say it again, it kind of just, most of it goes back to fear. We're not moving towards something. Most of the time we're moving away from what we fear. So we're not moving towards success. We're just trying to stay one step ahead of failure. Do you understand? That's what a sucky way to live. Then we wonder why our life, and Christians, I'm just telling you, Christians are living this way too. Like I said, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be a bestseller. It's going to be called The Miserable Christian Life. Because most Christians are living it. Why? Because they're still moving away from their fears. They don't have an identity of who they are in Christ. They truly don't have trust in their Heavenly Father. They can't believe the principles of God because they've never experienced any of that in their earthly life. So now we're just supposed to believe it in some spiritual life. That we have a Heavenly Father who provides for us, who gives us an identity of sonship, who protects us, right? If we just lean into Him. A Father that has, talking about last week, who has predestined us. Like a Father that knows us so intimately, knows the hair on our head, knows the gifts and talents, and He's like, man, you make a great worship leader. You know what? I'm going to make plans for you. I'm going to make schooling for you, education for you. I'm going to open doors for you. You're going to be able to use my name, and it's going to get you in the places you need to get into because I'm your Father and I see this gift, and so I'm pre-planning some of your future in that direction. Because I just see the smile on your face. I saw the smile on your face when you were 2 years old and you were just banging around on the pots and pans and you loved to make music. You were walking around the house singing and you just had a knack for it. You had a gift for it. You know what? That's because guess what? In my family tree, we got that. You know, that's from your father's side of the family. I put that in you through my seed. And so I'm going to plan a whole life for you with purpose, using your gifts, ability, and talents. I'm going to open doors for you. I'm going to keep the wolves away. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to do all this and that. We can't believe that. Because we never experienced it. But now we come to Christ and we're just supposed to believe it all. Believe, right? That He's our Heavenly Father who's preordained our steps, that He rebukes the devourer. No weapon formed against us will prosper. Well, huh? No, because in our life, we've had to do it all. We've had to beat the wolves off. You know, we haven't had a good shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. No, I grew up wanting everything, all kinds of things, and being told I couldn't have it. Dreaming of one day thinking I could have it, and then even that was like, boy, I don't know what you're thinking. You need to work by the sweat of your brow, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and hopefully maybe one day if you work hard enough, you might be able to get some used, beat up piece of whatever. And I'm dreaming of being an entrepreneur, making millions of dollars. And my father laughing at it. Acting out of his fear that if he allowed me to dream, I might be weak or I might not be able to, because he had dreams and hopes too. But in his 8th grade, he had to drop out because he had an alcoholic father, and so he was the oldest son. So he had to start going to work when he was in 9th grade, right? And earning money for his 3 siblings and his mom. And then he went and joined the Navy, and then he sent every paycheck he got from the Navy back to his mom. Never himself never had a chance to just dream. Right? Responsibility. Why? Because he had an absentee father who was an alcoholic. So you think he's going to let somebody dream? No, you need to be responsible. Okay? So fear. To answer your question, fear. If you find the cause of what's repeating your cycle, I can almost guarantee you created a cycle, a circle around avoiding something, staying away from, trying to, and it's built around some sort of fear. This is the beauty of when you come into a relationship with the God of love. Perfect love casts out all fear. And when you know you have the love of the Father, when you know you have the love of the shepherd, then you can read that Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. He prepares a table before me in the presence. All of that stuff is so unbelievable, and so we have not experienced it. But it comes from my love relationship. A trust relationship. You haven't been able to trust somebody to lead you beside still waters, create a place of refuge for you where you can lay your head down in green pastures. Who prepares a banquet feast in the presence of your enemies? No, you've always had to fight your enemies off, fight over your food. And he's like, listen, I'm going to treat you like a queen, and I'm going to show you off right in the presence of your haters. Ain't nothing they can do about it. And I'm going to show them what it looks like to be my child. And the haters are going to hate, and I'm going to bless you in spite of their meanness towards you. Right? We haven't experienced that. We haven't had a father or a man or whatever set us up like that. But that's what the Heavenly Father does. Now, we've had some mothers that look out for us, but sometimes even then, they leave us for a man, right? They choose a lover over their children. So it messes with us. right? And then we become insecure. Now we're looking for security. And we associate, listen, we associate predictability with security. That's the disconnect. That's where most of the problems come in there. Because now we're choosing predictability over success, thinking that in our subconscious, we want security. And it's usually, we always wind up with something less than, right? So, anyways, fear. I could have answered that question in 1 second. Fear. Fear. We're afraid. And then most of our, then we create a whole alter ego. And I could go into that. We shove that kid into a closet and go, you just stay right there. I'm going to create a bodyguard to protect you. And we put the little kid in the closet. And now we live our life. And what comes out of the room, we shove the little kid in a room at some point, and the person that comes in and out of the room is a bodyguard for the real us. And the real us is still a little kid that's never had a chance to live. But this bodyguard, he's been out here ruling, bumping heads, fighting, and everything, saying, I ain't gonna let you to that little kid, because that little kid got hurt. And that little kid, you ain't never gonna see him again. You're gonna have to deal with the bodyguard. You want to get to him, you're gonna have to go through me. And we live our whole life as a bodyguard for the real us, trying to protect the real us. Because if the real us is ever seen, last time the real us was seen, the real us got hurt. So now we just go around destroying stuff. Running, fighting, fears. Amen? All right, what time is it? I got to let you guys go. All right, not too bad. Not too